Good evening. My name is Jess, and I am going to give you a brief overview of my master thesis in regards to telehealth, with quality and satisfaction being the primary focus. I apologize in advance. I have apparently come down with something pretty fierce, and I'm not feeling fantastic. The question posed with my master thesis and what I was really looking at was the world of telehealth has grown immensely in the last 14 months. It is, back in March of 2020, it was 154% bigger than it was in the same time period in 2019. The pandemic has stretched telehealth to immense levels and required so much more of this virtual platform than had ever been seen before. Telehealth is nothing new. It's been around for a century now, but with the social distancing, the lockdowns, things like that, telehealth grew immensely in just a few short weeks. For myself and the company that I work for, we started building a virtual intensive outpatient program, and within just about 4 to 6 weeks we had it launched nationwide, and we have continued to build that platform for the last 14 months. I've been fortunate enough to be an operations lead for the virtual program, and the size in which it has grown in the last 14 months is incredible. But that just speaks to and attests to the need for virtual services and the need for telehealth. But the hypothesis that's being talked about here is telehealth has created no change in the quality and satisfaction of patient care from both patient and staff perspective. The telehealth, as I said, has been around for centuries. A century. The first known diagnosis came in 1925 over a radio show, and it has continued to evolve since then. There have been billions of dollars worth of financial relief that has been provided to the telehealth world in order to continue to grow, because people are aware of its need and its effectiveness in the medical community. So the methodology that I used for this particular master thesis was that of a mixed method ethnographic quasi-experimental design. I basically used metadata analysis and a survey questionnaire, and was able to look at the information and the research in a couple of different ways. The survey that was created was a 14-question-long survey. The first 4 questions within the survey looked strictly at the demographics of those participating. It was a completely optional opt-in, opt-out survey format. It was placed on several different social media platforms, and people were able to jump in to complete the survey rather than it being sent directly to anybody with the request of them participating. It was also completely anonymous. No information such as date of birth, name, email address, nothing like that was requested. I was more looking at the demographics such as ethnicity, religious affiliation, gender, things like that, in order to just kind of determine the background in which people were responding. Some of the data highlights that were pulled from my master thesis paper that was recently submitted. I had 27 total responses to the survey, not nearly as many as I was hopeful for. I was hopeful for somewhere between 75 and 100, just based on previous survey experience. I know that that's possible, so it was not as many as I was hoping for. 22 out of the 27 respondents were that of the female gender, which they, looking back at the data, it actually shows that females 56 to 45% are much more likely or have utilized telehealth services. So I thought that was an interesting correlation. The 2 most common age groups that were present within my survey respondents were that of 25 to 34 and 35 to 44. There were 14 questions asked, but the final one presented here on the screen is, I am satisfied with the new virtual platform and prefer to remain in the current state of things indefinitely. It was interesting because this really was, if you look at the data, a pretty even split as far as those who would prefer it to stay this way, and for those who would prefer it to maybe perhaps find itself more on site than in virtual. I'm not sure if people realize how prominent virtual services have been over the last century, or how much is being dedicated and devoted into the virtual telemedicine world, and it's just going to continue to be devoted into because it is a very valuable tool. So I think people are used to it now, or becoming used to it now based on the pandemic. But I do think that people may just not be aware of how frequent or how available it has been in the past. So it strongly disagree in relation to wanting it to maintain. You're looking at about a 44, close to 45% response rate there versus the strongly agree or agree, which is actually only sitting at, and I wrote this down incorrectly, I apologize, 32%. So there's actually more who would prefer more on-site service than those in the virtual world. But I truly do think it depends on perhaps the nature of the medical services in which you're seeking. I know from a mental health standpoint with the company that I work for, virtual services are very sought after, but maybe that would be different for something of a primary care provider or a specialist who maybe physical contact with a patient for a physical examination, palpation, testing, things like that might be more useful. So that could be where some of those responses at that 27 total responses were coming from. The survey did not go into great detail as far as maybe what area of medicine that they work in. So that would be something interesting to learn a little bit more about from those 27 who did participate, is where their background or involvement was in regards to kind of how they answered these questions. So I was quite interested to find how many people were not as sort of involved or invested in the world of telemedicine, or maybe how many were dissatisfied with it. I will say, though, that there was millions upon millions, potentially even billions is what was projected at the end of last year to have been reached in telehealth services in 2020. The small 27 responses I got was pretty minuscule compared to the overall usage of it. So I would be curious on a larger scale. I know that being in the virtual world now with the operations that I do, you can get great care. It is absolutely a valuable resource. Is it great for sports physicals and things like that? No, of course not. You would need to be on site. But I think to do away with virtual services completely is not in the world's best interest. And I really do think it's more of an educational thing that we can continue to grow virtual services and show the benefit. I think it is important to have really clear guidelines on what's appropriate and what's not appropriate for virtual services, and that could help with that satisfaction rate, which also could help with the quality rate if people have maybe improper expectations of what virtual services are able to offer. But I will say I think it is a very valuable option in the world of telemedicine, and I am excited to see money and financial resources pushed it forward with it in order to continue to grow it as an option. So I thank you guys so much for joining me this evening. I will leave you with Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. Even when unable to be on site with a medical provider, the world of virtual services and telehealth gives the ability for a provider to be there for you and you to continue to get the care that you need. So I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a blessed night. Thank you.